Hello, I'm Jim Porter, and my channel's name is Skeptical Spectrum. And today I'm expressing some critical thoughts inspired by and in response to the April 30th, 2018 video by Rationality Rules called Everyone is Religious, Debunked, Jordan Peterson. That's the whole title, Everyone is Religious-Debunked, parentheses, Jordan Peterson. Heads up, I disagree with Peterson. Now, as a disclaimer, if you think I'm strawmanning Peterson's position in this video, please tell me why in the comments, or better yet, give me a concise description of what you think his position really is. So then let me just jump in and start by saying that in the video, Jordan Peterson, in order to justify his claim that everyone is religious, defines religion as your implicit axioms. Then he asserts that you don't know your most implicit axioms consciously, but that your actions display your implicit axioms, and therefore your religious convictions. His definition makes sense in a way because implicit often means non-conscious, or at least not expressed in any obvious way, even to yourself. We may be unaware of a lot of our own beliefs a lot of the time. Sure, I have a link to the implicit association test in the description below, which kind of measures that on various different levels or constructs. I think Jordan Peterson is saying that you really can't tell what a person believes by what they say they believe, but by the way they act. This is fine. Other people have said that. Physicist Amit Goswami said it in a documentary featuring himself. I think it's called The Quantum Activist. And cognitive behavioral therapy operates on the assumption that your cognitive schema and your automatic thoughts, conscious and unconscious, influence your emotions and behavior. Even though I can see that, I have some problems with how Jordan Peterson uses this idea. For example, or first of all, Peterson seems to assert that all axioms are religious axioms. He states that your implicit axioms probably necessarily have to do with a concept of a deity. He clearly asserts a strong definition that your axiomatic system is essentially religious. That's a quote. The word essentially makes it a strong claim. This is a non-argument or a circular argument because he's saying that your axiomatic system is religious because your axiomatic system is religious. In this assertion, he's ignoring the fact that religiosity has been operationalized for measurement by psychological researchers for years and years and years, and that different people have different levels of religiosity. I assert that these differences in level are crucially important, with differences of level amounting to differences in category, making religious and non-religious two viable discrete categories. Though religious or religiosity can be measured as a spectrum, so can colors. And we make clear distinctions between blue and red, don't we? So let's say that you can score from 0 to 100 on a scale of religiosity. I believe that a score of 5 would characterize you as negligibly religious, and that a score of 95 would suggest you are undoubtedly religious. Jordan Peterson did not discuss the idea of discrete categories or ranges or negligible amounts of religiosity. So if you wanted to categorize people as religious and non-religious, you'd have ample justification in doing so. You could just reason out a meaningful cutoff score and use statistical analyses to verify those cutoffs. You'd be able to put the categories to use also, which is a very important factor in determining if something is real and true. You can actually put these categories to actual use. For example, let's say you were going to market your Christian rock concert to a target audience. Would you spend your money targeting the lowest religiosity group, or would you want people to buy tickets? I have links in the description to 2 articles that explore operationalizing religiosity. I also have a link to the Belief-O-Matic, which tries to see what religion you are and how important religion is to you by your actual conscious responses. Also, to examine Peterson's claim fairly and generously, I tried to make the assumption that the word religion can also be used to mean strong beliefs, not necessarily of a supernatural nature. Ha ha, supernatural nature. I think that's a cool juxtaposition of words. And an Oxford Languages definition does state that the word religion can mean a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. So that's not necessarily um, supernatural, but the words ascribes and supreme are very important here because Peterson's assertion that the implicitness of our axioms makes them unknown but powerful internal influencers within us is undone by the word ascribes. Ascribe is more of an intentional attribution making. Its root words are Latin words meaning to write, and that strongly suggests conscious assignation of meaning. The word supreme in the definition of religion is far too strong, in my opinion. It implies that these axioms override all the rest of your motivational processes, rendering them moot. We have countless unconscious thoughts mixing with each other to influence our behavior. Which one is supreme? The one that gets us to cry Jesus in a foxhole, or the one that gets us to abuse our loved ones when we are intolerably frustrated, or the ones that push us to have nasty, nasty sex all night long? Which one? Which one? Which one? Another thing Peterson did was to deny your power to decide if you're religious or not, and eventually claim that the power was in his hands, the hands of the outside trained observer. He's saying he knows you better than you do. He's claiming that your unconscious beliefs are more important to consider than your conscious beliefs. He does this to give his argument the advantage because it means that if you spend your time consciously thinking deeply about the nature of reality and using reason and evidence to come to your conclusions, that doesn't count. What he's saying is that only the beliefs you didn't acquire by reason and only the beliefs that you don't know you have are the ones that define you. If you tell him the beliefs that you know you have, he will say that those aren't your real, true, deep beliefs. He's saying something that isn't really falsifiable in the moment, too. He can't go inside in the moment and look at your unconscious thoughts and bring them out to compare to his behavioral analysis of your beliefs. I'm not saying that we cannot test for unconscious beliefs and expectations and thoughts, etc. We can. What I am saying is that he's moving toward the conclusion that someone who says they are religious is telling the truth, and someone who is saying they are not religious isn't telling the truth. He seems to imply that a Christian claiming their Christianity knows themselves, and that an atheist who claims to be an atheist doesn't know themselves. I don't know what that fallacy is. Maybe false non-equivalence, actually double standard. Whatever it's called, he's saying that a claim of religiosity is more valid than a claim of non-religiosity. Now, I do acknowledge that the statement I just made could be wrong in terms of Peterson. Perhaps Jordan Peterson does tell religious people that they too are not really professing their implicit axioms, that they too are confessing merely their consciously held beliefs, but not their most deeply held beliefs. But I think that telling us that all people are religious simply entails that a claim of religiosity is more valid than a statement of skepticism. Also, I think that insisting that all of this is about unconscious beliefs rather than conscious beliefs needs evidentiary proofs and not just the claims of an expert. I believe that it's Peterson's way of slipping in an appeal to authority fallacy. And I know that I am committing the mind reading fallacy by saying that. But he mentions that we have to go to university and study psychology, asserting that religion is accurately observable only to such a trained observer. Now, to be fair, I'm not accusing him of committing this fallacy consciously. Ha, ha. That's a slam. Big time slam. Anyway, this opens him to the criticism that he's ignoring the fact that trained psychologists are intended to be skeptical and careful about making knowledge claims. So again, trained psychologists are intended to be skeptical and careful about making knowledge claims. And they would question their own judgments as much as they would question the average person's. And they would avoid claiming to be able to look inside your mind, because that's a strong and nearly superstitious claim, even though we can infer things about what's going on inside of you. Yes. Also, Peterson's making the claim that could be labeled as superstitious. He's saying this invisible thing is the only part that matters. Now, I recognize he's not necessarily alluding to your soul. He could easily mean your nervous system and the cognitions produced by it. And I acknowledge that mental health research uses abstract concepts as variables and associates them with human behaviors. For example, in one study, researchers tacitly primed participants to have the presumably unconscious thoughts of either youth or elderly, and then timed how quickly they took to walk down a hallway. Those primed unconsciously with the concept of elderly walked significantly more slowly than the others. There's a link to a report of one of these studies in the description below. But still, inferring someone's cognition from behavior is less certain than Peterson suggests. There is plenty of conjecture about the inferences made in these types of studies, and self-report is considered perhaps just as important as the scientist's inferences about you. Self-report is huge in psychometrics. One last thing Peterson did was to say that you are extremely complicated, that's A, and B, that you are undoubtedly religious. And what I think from that is that saying you are complicated necessitates Peterson saying that he really can't be sure whether you are religious or not. But he doesn't seem to acknowledge that possibility. In summary, Peterson's assertion and defense of the statement everyone is religious relies on convincing you that he knows better than you do, appeal to authority, that he knows you better than you do, appeal to authority, that he's given you an adequate description about what the research says on the subject, that's cherry picking or misrepresenting his profession's body of knowledge. He also implied that differences in degree don't amount to differences in kind, and that's false equivalence. And most easily, that Peterson saying that everyone is religious is a claim that he knows what everyone believes. That's called the omniscience fallacy. So one important point that Jordan Peterson fails to consider is that even if we are filled with implicit axioms, it still matters if those axioms are factual. Don't we think that? It matters if they are true or false. It also matters if these axioms are amenable to change through effort, experience, and evidence. If everyone is religious, it is still the case that many people are willing to challenge their own beliefs by putting them to tests of logic and evidence, and let the facts correct even the most implicit assumptions. That's what seemed to happen to me, but in the reverse. It wasn't a pleasant thing because I was trying to become more of a believer and have more justification to believe in some sort of intelligence of the universe. I sought for years to find more evidence to believe in a deity, but that actually led me to becoming unconvinced of it. In fact, as I decided to do this, I started to notice assumptions that I didn't even consciously know I had. I started to see beliefs I had that I never knew were inside me. And as I started to see them, I started to realize some of them were not verified. As that happened, they became harder and harder to believe. Could that be how we access and correct our implicit axioms? Maybe so. Even if everyone is unconsciously religious, some of us are consciously non-religious. Peterson did not succeed in making the conscious less important than the unconscious in his description. So his idea that everyone is religious is undone. Now, thank you so much for watching. Please leave comments below, and please like and share, and please look in the description for all of the really cool links that I gave. I appreciate it. Thank you.